What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Martian and Ozzy podcast. I am the Martian, joined by my co-host, as always, Ozzy. This week, we're going to be talking about the Brian Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez card going down this weekend from Long Island, New York. And how you feeling about this fight card? How you doing this week, Ozzy?
I love when my Latino brothers are top billing. They're out east, close to the Hamptons. So hopefully they put on a great fight, sip some Modelo's after. And yeah, one of them, seems like is going to be fighting for the featherweight title after this. So I'm definitely always intrigued at what the 145ers put out there, and I think it's an intriguing main event that people have been wondering what a fight like this, how it would go for a while. So, looking forward to it.
Definitely a great matchup, but I think Emmett has got to be next, right? And then Emmett and Arnold Allen. I mean, these guys don't deserve a title shot, even if they win. It'll be a great fight,
No,
though.
fuck the white guys. One of these guys gets the next title shot. Let's go. Fuck the white people.
I don't think it's gonna happen,
Make
but
that
still,
make them
great,
make
great.
them fight. If they're gonna make the two Mexicans fight, make Emmett and fucking Arnold Allen fight. That's how I feel.
That's true. I think they're just gonna give Emmett Volkanovski like the end of the year, hopefully. But anyway, good card top to bottom here. Lost a few good fights in the card, but still real good. I will be in attendance for the card. Early start, bright and early, 11 a.m. is the first fight. Not really sure what the fuck that's all about, but I will be in attendance with my boy Coco. So if anybody is gonna be there as well, reach out on Twitter. And quick recap of last week. Personally, my track bets weren't that bad, but I'll tell you guys honestly, it was the most I've ever lost on a card. Just like terrible bets, terrible live bets. Everything went wrong. The track bets I only lost 2.6 units, but man, just a whole lot of shit went wrong. Vandera, he killed me. Vandera killed me. The live
You
bets,
bet
the
on
props,
Vendera.
everything. Um,
Yeah, I bet on Vendera
I
in the
live bet
third
him too. I know
round.
you.
Minus, yeah,
I'm about to
I
say,
got
yeah, you
minus
did too. Yeah,
115, like a minute into the third round when I thought, or a minute and a half. I don't know. I thought it was going to be a clear win, and and then I don't like that was. It's one thing to fight like that, like first two rounds, and then you see it's kind of like tit for tat. Like you would think you kind of mix it up a little bit, but like Chase Sherman literally, I don't think has ever had a knockout outside the first round, so it was pretty unfortunate for that. But I thought minus 115 was pretty fair.
Oh, it was. I mean, I made the same live bet. I mean, he was eating punches all fight, and then he gets knocked out. It's just I feel like last card, just a lot of unpredictable outcomes happen. Even my boy Nzechiku, my biggest bet that won, like he turned into a D1 wrestler and won the fight that way. I wasn't expecting that shit at all. So, definitely a little bit of a rough patch. Also, both of our best bets went down hard. Ronnie and Ricky, both
Terrible.
terrible bets, and we're
The
just on a
Ricky
cold
the
streak
Ricky
right
fight
now.
the Ricky fight, the most peculiar fight I've ever seen ever in my life. I mean, it even closed how I said I capped. I don't know if I said on a podcast or when talking to people, I was like, yeah, I think it's like maybe like 70%, so like minus 230, 240. It literally closes there. I bet it at minus 170, minus 175. So you got, 60, 70 cents of closing line value. And then, I mean, that fight is just so odd because you hear, I don't know who's in the corner. It's like Alex Morono and someone from Alpha Male, but this dude's a hobby. Like every time it looks like he's about to throw, Ricky's corner is like, here he comes, here he comes. Like they're treating this guy like he's fucking Godzilla. Like if he's gonna like, hurt Ricky or whatever it is. And I mean, it was just the oddest fight I've ever seen. Like the fact that he fought like that makes no sense to me. Like why you would fight like that against Faraz or Ayman Zahabi. Just crazy. And even then, it was 1-1 on like two judges' scorecards going into round three.
I
So
think
if
all
you
three.
fight like what?
Oh no, you're right. It might be two.
No, one of the judges had a 2-0 Amen. But even in round three, so if you fight like that for 10 minutes and you're hitting air and obviously it's not working and like whatever, how do you not put the foot to the gas pedal and go and actually just hit the guy? Like the only strikes this guy Zahabi is landing are fucking like leg kicks, inside leg kicks at that. So I mean, it was just shocking that like this corner wasn't like, all right, Ricky, like we fucked around for 2 rounds, like we don't know what we need to win this round. And it didn't need you didn't it didn't take much. Like you land like a few combinations, shoot a takedown, get a clinch, hit some shots. That was crazy. So I would have made this. I would make the bet again. Honestly, minus 170. I'd do it again. but
I
whatever.
mean, it just seemed like Ricky was spooked, and he seemed like he didn't want to fight with his typical style, the style that got him this far. It seemed like he abandoned that, was trying to fight completely
Bro,
different
he has never ever like had that lack of
couple
accuracy or
commitment.
actual
He
like
didn't
real
commit to anything.
strikes ever. Even if you look at like the Boston Salmon fight, his tough fights, his all his fights, dude. So it is what it is.
That's true. That's enough about last week. And first fight this week, we got women's strawweight division. Emily Ducati making her UFC debut. Pretty short notice, taking on Jessica Penne. The odds for this one have Ducati minus 152, Penne plus 132. I mean, I watched some of Ducati's fights, and to me, she just looks like another decent boxer, a decent women's boxer. Um, Honestly, I was a lot higher on Lupi Godinez coming into the UFC. I thought her boxing skill was a lot better. I mean, pretty similar women. They're just Loopy didn't really wrestle too much in LFA before getting to the UFC, and Ducati kind of seems like the same thing. She's just like a decent, maybe above average women's boxer who's been winning fights over in LFA. But you saw Penny in that Godinez fight. I mean, she's a tricky fighter. She's long. She knows how to get good positions on the ground. And she's a veteran. She's really old, 39 years old, but she still looks, decent physically, honestly. Considering she hasn't, taken much damage in the past few years. So I just don't get why the market is so high on Ducati. I think a lot of it has to do with that knockout over Danielle Taylor. I think everyone's just super high on her from that. But I feel like if you take away that one fight of hers, people are a lot less high on this woman. And I don't see a single thing special from Ducati. So for a woman coming into the UFC, making her debut on short notice against a tough veteran, I think there's no way I'm laying juice on Ducati here. So it's Penne or pass. Maybe a stab on Penne sub is worth it, but, yeah, I think, Ducati has a lot to prove before I endorse her.
So I bet Penne in her last two fights, both fights she was plus money on, and good hits there. But in this fight, I prefer Emily Ducote. I think that Jessica Penne, at 39, like you need to kind of play into her game with the grappling a little bit. Like on the feet, like just her strikes are just they're pretty harmless in my opinion. She doesn't really sit down on any punches. Like her kicks are like really really weak. They're really slow and telegraphed, in my opinion. So I think it should be easy for Emily Ducote to like parry some of those kicks away, counter, maybe land some kicks of her own. And I mean, I think her grappling is not that bad. Like, she's been put on her back a few times, and she's, in my opinion, she's not a bad grappler. Jessica Panay is a good grappler, though. I'll give her credit. She finds a way to make it effective. And I like that, and I think it's a good attribute, especially in women's MMA. And I wouldn't be surprised to seeing her win this fight. But I just think that as the fight goes later on, I think the effectiveness of Jessica Panay's grappling does go down a little bit in terms of finishing equity. I do think, if you bet Jessica Panay, you do take a little stab at submission round one, because I think as the fight goes on, I think she starts to fatigue like her style. She kind of goes for like higher risk, not higher risk maneuvers and like maneuvers that like they'll take a little bit extra energy. Ducati, I think, is a little more steady, and I think she'll chip away at Jessica. But both these girls are kind of slow. I could see this fight going over as well. Where and I think the over, I think, has the under has been getting hit. So I think you could get involved on the over if you like that in in a women's fight. That's usually not a bad idea. But I just think Ducote, she's versatile with the striking, hits to all levels. And yeah, I think she's gonna win this fight in some way. So yeah, I'll take Ducote.
All right, we're back. We just had a slight little audio issue. Aussie switched his mic, and we should be good now, though. I was asking a follow-up, though. I was gonna say the goes the distance on this fight is only minus 165. Do you think that that is, like, a weird line? Like, don't you think that they're overrating a finish here?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are betting on this under. I think that the Cody could get it going later on, but Panay, her cardio is good enough that I don't think she gets finished. And like I said, I think the Cody has pretty good submission skills herself, so I don't see her getting finished too much. Um, so I wouldn't mind the stab in the over. But I think the Cody's gonna win this fight. So at the similar price, for the over or the goes the distance or the Cody, honestly, I like the Cody side, the Cody side better.
Yeah, I think gun in my head pick will be Ducati as well. I just think that it's just not worth laying the juice on. But enough about that one. Next fight, middleweight division. Dustin Stoltzfus taking on Dwight Grant. Grant's the favorite, -131. Stoltzfus +111. Stoltzfus still looking for his first UFC win. You think he gets it here, Ozzy?
I like Dustin here a bit. Obviously the line's been getting bet down. I just foresee him and kind of see, excuse me, him being able to get similar grappling going that you saw Honda do in his last fight. Dwight Grant does have pretty long arms, obviously, right? So he's not going to be at too big of a disadvantage in terms of reach going up to 185. But I don't see him have some of that hustle, even at 170. So I think the when you combine the fact that he's not really hustling for these grappling positions, and then now he might be either a little smaller physically or weight wise, and maybe have a little bit of a harder time getting up or getting or nullifying some of the grappling just from being a little bit bigger or similar strength that he did at 170. I think Dustin does have some advantages there, and then on the feet, even though Dwight Grant is kind of, does land some big shots, has decent power and decent boxing, he just so low volume. And, I think that Dustin Stoltzfus will be able to avoid some of those shots. They're kind of telegraphed there at times. His striking is not good himself, but I think we'll get a decent performance from him. This is a hometown fight for Dwight Grant, but I don't really think that plays too big of a role. So I kind of lean with the Dustin side. Not a confident pick now at the price that it's at. I did take maybe like a little stale, like it was like +135, but I'm not that passionate about the fight. If I had to make one pick on it, maybe that still has value, would be just Dustin by decision, at which is plus 300, 380. You could see even at FanDuel 350. I think that's solid. But I could also see him getting a submission here at some point. But I think Dustin by decision is a decent play, and I lean to him at the +20 side on the money line.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with pretty much everything. I mean, I don't think you can be super passionate about this fight just because both guys are on the underwhelming side. But in an underwhelming fight like this, I think you got to go with the dog with Stolfutz, especially +124 still lingering out there on FanDuel. I mean, I do think that's value, but I don't think I'm going to be betting it myself just because Dwight does swing hard. He does throw, just all he knows how to do is throw hard punches. Um, and I feel like that is enough to, make me want to pass on this one. I see a lot of people playing the overs and goes to distances, and I kind of lean that way as well. But again, just all Grant knows how to do is throw hard punches. This guy has no jab, no leg kick, no offensive wrestling. All he does is swing hard, and I think that that's not the greatest recipe for this fight going over. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'll pick Stolfutz by decision 380. I think that's a pretty good number, but no bet for me on this one. Next fight is a fight I do have an official bet on. Jung taking on Dustin Jacoby. Jung -121 on bet online right now. Jacoby +101. Crazy line movement all over this fight. I was able to bet Jung +130, I believe, on Sunday, right after the last card. And he's all the way down to -120 now. So some crazy line movement on Jung here. I think where it's at now, honestly, the value's probably shifted back towards Jacoby. Any plus on this fight is probably good. But my thinking in the fight was if the fight stays purely striking, I cap Jung as a slight underdog. I think that Dustin is a little more comfortable, has a lot more experience in the striking minutes. He obviously has that good leg kick, and he's just comfortable in striking fights. So I give Jacoby a little bit of a pure striking edge. But if Jung decides to grapple here, he can immediately look like a big favorite. I mean, when he decided to grapple against William Knight, I mean, he dominated that fight on the floor. And I think that Jacoby is liable to get taken down here if Jung really wants to attempt those takedowns. So for a fight where I think Jung can compete on the feet, maybe have some big moments with that power of his, and then he has the potential to dominate potentially with his grappling. So I think that's why I liked him at that plus money price. I'm not really sure what all this action is coming in on Jung. I saw one person say, I mean, he's younger, he's arguably more athletic, he's the harder hitter, he has more potential to improve. in between fights. And Jacoby did look pretty bad in his last fight against McCall. And the last thing I'll say is Jacoby, his fights are just, he wins them by 29-28. You know, the Kudalaba fight was a draw. The John Allen fight was a 29-28. The McCall fight, 29-28. The only guy he's really blown out of the water is like Darren Stewart and Justin Ledet. But I just think the guy is generally in close fights, and I think that plus money is decided to be on in those close fights. So I like my Jung bet. I'm letting it ride for sure. What are your thoughts here, Ozzy?
My initial lean was Jung, but I wasn't that enthusiastic about playing this fight at all. For the most part, I see it's the most probably contentious fight on the card, which I find funny. I faded Jacoby in his last fight against Mikal. I just saw Mikal was going to be able to hit that body and find the chin at some point. And honestly, looking back at the fight, I don't feel that bad about it. Mikal's cardio let me down in that third round. It was obviously 1-1. But you saw in that third round, Jacoby started looking for the clinch at some points. He was getting pressured. He was backing up. He said right after he had an injury, whatever, you could believe a guy, you could not believe a guy. It's funny how people, they pick and choose who they want to believe had, ailments going into certain fights. But whatever. Yeah, he couldn't kick, whatever. It was a weird thought process. But, I think that the same kind of thing could happen in the third round here against Jung. I mean, you saw Cody Brundage last week. He looked like he was huffing and puffing pretty well 3 minutes into that Gore fight, and he's like Dustin Jacoby's main training partner. I'm pretty confident Jung won't get tired. He obviously has a great chin, as you've seen multiple times. And I mean, the only play I'm going to make on this fight, I'm going to take round 3 Jung, just because of what I saw from Jacoby in that third round against Mikal. I just think overall Jacoby's not that good. Like, people give him way too much credit. They say, oh, he's a glory kickboxer. It's all nonsense, man. Like, Adeshev is a glory kickboxer as well. Jacoby, he's solid. He's all right. But some of the guys he's faced are not that good. John Allen, Ty Flores, Justin Ledet, he lost to Max Grisham. So I don't understand the being that confident in him. Like, his striking is okay, but the thing with Jung is he's very, very good on the counter. He's much younger. Like you said, I think he has some grappling upside, and he throws some creative strikes. He got Kennedy out of there with those elbows. People talk about the leg kicks all the time, but when has Jacoby been a crippling leg kicker? Like, against Justin Ledet, that's it. But I think it's pretty obvious that Jung, it's hard to hurt him. It's going to take a lot of volume for Jacoby, I think, to win this fight, even if it goes to the scorecards. So I actually prefer Jung overall. So I agree with you there. I'm not going to play the money line, and like I said, I've got round 3 Jung. I think that he could get to Jacoby late, and I'm pretty sure no matter how the fight plays out, I feel good about Jung hurting Jacoby at some point during the fight.
Yeah, and as you just mentioned, the win over Kennedy and Zetshiku aged well this past weekend. Kennedy picking up a dominant win. Um, that's going to take us to the next fight, featherweight division. We got Bill Algeo taking on Herbert Burns. Late notice fight here. It was supposed to be Algeo versus Quarantillo, and it's supposed to be Burns versus some Russian guy. The Quarantillo and the Russian guy fell out. Now we get this fight. So, what are you thinking about this featherweight fight here, Ozzy?
Yeah, so obviously both you and I know Bill, decently well. You trained at his gym. I've trained with him a few times. We competed against each other once. And I mean, I think all the stuff that you see on film and on tape is what people know Algeo for, right? He is diverse on the feet, striking wise, right? He's got that Muay Thai background. He is really, really slippery and very, very hard to submit, which, definitely can confirm that. And he's just well-rounded overall, right? He's not the best wrestler, but he does have some wrestling instincts overall. And just looking at, and this is a good stylistic matchup for him. So I could understand why this steam came in his direction. I was looking back at his fight against Brito again, and just what I would like to see from Bill is, like, sometimes he needs to, like, tighten up the defense a little bit. Like, against Brito, he was just leaning away from a lot of those shots. He's trying to kind of like intercept and kind of like parry the punches away, because he does like to like kind of grab a collar tie here and there off of it and close the distance when people are throwing at him and kind of land those knees and all. But he was letting Brito land, a decent amount of punches that are coming down the middle. And I think that could be an issue here as well, especially early on against Herbert. So I would like to see him be just use the shell more, like just shell up sometimes more where people are throwing big shots at him, because he just has such good cardio that if he can, deflect some shots and invite people to spend some energy, I think that he would actually get some of these finishes later on. I do favor Bill here. I do think that Herbert is kind of like a two pump chump. Not to discredit his skills at all. He does have some Muay Thai here. I don't think that he will get more than one takedown on Bill, in this fight. It could potentially come in the first round just because Bill does let people get in on his hips. But Herbert is not kind of like a power wrestler overall. But man, Bill, sometimes he does get loose when he is on top. He is like a little nonchalant and kind of is a little bit of a showman. And I will say also, this is the first UFC fight of his that is not in the Apex, right? And it is in a full arena and nearby to his hometown, right? He's like a Pennsylvania, Jersey guy, right? Went to Penn State as well, so he should have a good contingency out there. He might want to show out, but I kind of told him like, hey, look, just mind your P's and Q's early, and you should be able to start chopping this guy down late. So I hope he listens. I hope he's a little tighter with the defense early on, draws out some of these attacks from Burns, and then is able to start imposing his will later on. But also have to be careful if you do get on top of Burns, because he does have some dangerous attacks from on top on bottom, and he is a solid jiu-jitsu player. But I think that Bill's going to be able to land those overhands, eventually dig that body, use the Muay Thai clinch, and outpoint Herbert Burns, maybe to a late stoppage. But yeah, I will pick Bill to win this fight.
Yeah, I think it's a good move for Bill getting this matchup. Obviously, he went from plus 220 to minus 200, so it's good to see him getting a bit of a more favorable matchup close to home. I largely agree with your assessment of the fight. I think Burns is going to be, dangerous in round one. Bill builds into fights. He always is building into fights. He never typically starts super strong. But he really, figures the fight out as it goes, has good cardio, adapts well in the middle of the fight. So I think, pre-fight, I don't think you'd be betting Bill. Maybe minus 160, 70. Sure, that was a fine bet, but minus 200 where it's at now, the ship has sailed. Just wait and live bet him. I feel like in most of Bill's fights, he's been a better live bet than he has a pre-fight bet, and that's because of the reason I was just, describing, is building into the fight. So Herbert, I think, will have, some athleticism and explosion for him early on. Probably gets a takedown or two on Bill, maybe even a brief back take. But Bill is super comfortable defending back takes and submissions. He's really hard to submit. And Burns just, seems like a huge cardio dump kind of guy. We have not really seen him in a tough fight where he's dug deep in the later rounds. He always is kind of either finishing guys in round one or getting finished later in the fight himself. So barring any, big improvements from Burns over the past year and a half, which is possible, he did take a while off. He is training at Sanford. He does have a good camp behind him. So it's possible he's slightly improved. But from what I've seen on tape, I do think that Bill really should run away with the fight in the later rounds, possibly pulling off a stoppage. But I feel like Bill's fights just, inherently go the distance, and the fights are always, ending up going to the cards. So maybe take some stabs on round two, round three, Bill round two plus 650, round three plus 1,000. I think the round three is definitely worth it with 1,000. But they have Bill KO at plus 200. He doesn't seem like he really pours it on with his strikes at times. I feel like we might actually see Bill hunt a submission here if he can maybe get Burns hurt, and maybe try to make a statement, submitting the guy who's known for his submission. So Bill sub at 10-1, maybe the late sub props round two, round three at plus 3,000 and plus 4,000. Not bad there as well. So be cheering for my man Bill. I do think he gets it done. I would be pretty surprised to see Herbert, win the fight, especially considering Bill is just so hard to finish. And I don't see Burns. I definitely don't see Burns winning a decision. So I'd be pretty shocked to see Burns win, and have those fingers ready on the live bets. Halfway through round one, at the end of round one, be ready to live bet Bill here. And the next fight takes place in the bantamweight division. Ricky Simone versus Jack Shore. Banger of a matchup going down. Sure, -160, Simone +140. So, talking to people in our circle this week, popular underdog on Ricky Simone. I'm betting him as well. Got him +145. I was assuming the action was going to start coming in on Simone, but we're yet to really see that action come in on Ricky. I definitely think Shore's record is driving a lot of people to bet him here. Obviously 16-0, maybe 5 or 6-0 in the UFC. He's a decent fighter, but I've always been skeptical of him. I think Ozzy's kind of been in the same boat. We've always been just skeptical of the guy's skills, and I don't think he's yet to really prove that he's a top level fighter. I'm not saying Ricky Simone necessarily is. I think they're both kind of fringe top 15. But I mean, Shore's last fight in particular, Valiev. I mean, I think Valiev could have been up 2 rounds to 0 there, and then Shore ended up pulling back some late knockdowns, winning the fight that way. But I mean, Valiev certainly won round one. Round two was really close, and Valiev's a solid fighter. It's not like that was a bad performance from Jack Shore, but I just feel like this guy is kind of just you know a little above average everywhere. I don't think he's a great grappler. I don't think he's a great striker, and I think he's just going to be in for probably his toughest matchup in the UFC to date against Ricky Simone. Not the same case for Simone. Simone's had a lot tougher matchmaking than Shore has. An incredible difference in matchmaking, honestly. Shore's honestly had very easy matchmaking in his UFC thus far. And, the wrestling in this fight, you got to give the advantage to Simone. He's not the type of guy to hold a guy down after he gets takedowns, but I do think he's the better wrestler. And the striking here is going to be really competitive. I give Shore a slight advantage on the feet. But Simone's been improving his boxing. We saw that in the Ray Borg fight. His gas tank has never been a problem. He's always going hard for the full 15 minutes. And I like the Ricky Simone side here. I think I cap him at closer to like a slight dog, maybe +110 or something. So +140, I like that for a decent bet. And I think he probably grinds his way to a decision win here.
Yeah, and I'm also on the Ricky Simone side. I mean, this is the most intriguing fight to me overall on this card. Now, I mean, when I'm looking at this fight, I think the two things that are going to be most consequential here are one, the get-ups of Jack Shore and the butterfly hooks and how Ricky's able to neutralize it, from on top by using his knees and kind of, just, stripping those hooks. And then the second thing that I'm curious about is the left kick of Jack Shore. He throws that left high kick out very, very often. And I think he does that, it's just a smart tactical weapon for him to use. He throws it up to the head a lot. A guy like Simone, he was showing a lot of head movement in the fight against the Sun South. So I feel that that will definitely be a key here that he's going to look to throw out there often. But overall, I mean, Jack Shore, yeah, he's got a good jab. He throws it out quickly and he's got a decent cross behind it. But I feel like Ricky's pretty prepared for that. I think that the shots that he throws out there have a lot more power in them. And I mean, from seeing his fights, especially with Hunter Azure, I think people see that and think that he's going to be able to do something similar. And the biggest difference that I see between Azure and a guy like Simone is just like the horsepower. And I mean, Azure, he just a little bit slighter of frame. You just kind of see it when he and Shore lock up. He's not very thick at all. He's kind of like a smaller 135er, and he's more of a finesse guy. Whereas Simone, he's got both the speed and finesse, but he combos that with a lot of power and great cardio as well. So I think he's gonna grind on Jack Shore. I don't see Shore hurting him, too much with the hands. I think Ricky's gonna be able to avoid a lot of those punches, and I do think that Jack Shore's defense, even on the feet, leaves a lot to be desired. He got hit often by Hunter Azure, and I think that Ricky's going to be able to stand up to him, put him on the back foot instead, put him against the cage, put him on the ground. And at +140, I just love it. Or +145 actually on DraftKings. I love Ricky Simone here in this spot. I do think this guy's a legit, top 10 contender in this bantamweight division. I think he is still growing. The guy's still only 29 years old. I think he's turning 30 this year, but only 29. So I think this is his moment here. I think Jack Shore's coming, it's a little early for him. Yes, he did well in that Timur Valiev fight, but that's a hometown fight. I think there's a few things in there that I kind of saw like favorable, to him. I hope Mark Goddard is not the referee in this fight. I just saw some weird things happening in that Timur Valiev fight that I hope to not see here in terms of preferential stuff. But a lot of the guys that Jack Shore has fought have been on the underside, like on the lesser side in terms of experience, like Nolan Hernandez, Aaron Phillips, Hunter Azure. The one guy that he fights that is, similar experience level to him in Timor, he looks like he's on his way to losing the fight. And I think that Ricky Simone, he's just developed a lot. He's paid his dues in the UFC. He knows how to fight, a guy like Jack Shore. And I think he's the perfect foil for a guy like Jack Shore. But Jack is good. I don't want to underrate him too much. I did beforehand, but I think this is biting off a little more than he could chew. I wouldn't be shocked at him winning this fight. But I think it will be competitive. So I've got Ricky money line, and I got him by decision as well. I just think overall it's a great spot for him. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to these guys squaring up.
Yeah, I think I might have to take a little bit of that short or Simon decision plus 230. I mean, you got to add a little bit there. Keep most of it on the money line, but add a little cherry on top of that decision. Obviously, the most likely way he wins the fight. Moving way up in weight here, the middleweight division, we have Puna Soriano taking on Algeo-Lungiambula. Puna minus 240, Dalcha plus 205. Uh, what are you thinking about this one, Ozzy?
I don't have a tremendous amount of thoughts here. Mostly, I think that these guys might be a little familiar with each other in terms of training, just because Dalcha was at Extreme Couture up until early this year. What I think will happen here is I think Puna is honestly going to have a little bit of a harder time than he probably expects landing that left hand, just because Dolce, he's all the way in or he's all the way out. I kind of do want to see these guys grapple a little bit. Dolce does have the judo, which I don't think will be a factor until possibly later on in the fight. But I wouldn't be surprised at seeing him take down Puna. I just don't think that he's going to be able to get too much top control in this fight. But I could see us being quite close. So I'm definitely not laying the juice on Puna. What is the just looking at a line here? I mean, fight goes a distance, I think is okay. As well as the over 1.5, just because, like I said, I think it's gonna be a little harder for Puna to land that left hand. I could be totally wrong. It's not something that I'm probably gonna play. But I just could see these guys, clinching a little bit more than expected, and Dolce kind of like looking to force it there, just because he kind of knows Puna maybe slows down a little bit and loses steam in that left hand. So the potential familiarity between the two, I think makes me lean towards the over. But I don't have too many thoughts on the side. I would probably lean Dolce here, maybe a Dolce by decision as a value play overall. But yeah, it's probably a fight that I won't have any action on.
Yeah, I do have a bet on this one. Just a half unit bet on Dolce plus 220. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of thoughts either. It's just I see the fight being a lot closer than plus 220. I think they're both, super strong athletic guys, kind of come from a wrestling background. Puna a little more boxing oriented these days. But I just see the fight being a lot closer. I mean, Dolce can definitely put a good round or two together. He definitely struggles in that third round. But guess what? So does Puna Soriano. He always is slowing down as the fight goes on. So where that you got to always be worried about Dolce's cardio. Well, the same thing on the other side here with the huge favorite in Puna. Now, I think Puna definitely looked pretty good with his defensive grappling against Maximov. Initially, there he was stuffing a lot of shots and doing well and doing damage. I definitely think he won that fight, winning the first two rounds. But I think Dolce obviously has a whole different style of wrestling than Maximov. He's not going to go for those weak single legs. I mean, he has a lot more torque and can generate a lot more power behind those takedowns. So I think Puna could land some takedowns here. I think they're both going to be swinging for the fences and the feet. Either guy could catch one another. They could definitely hit one another, and the fight could end by knockout at any time. But I do kind of agree with the fight going over. I think they kind of should cancel each other out. And I think the GTD at plus 180 is pretty good, just because they both slow down. I could see them kind of canceling each other out a bit in round three. And it definitely seems like Puna is not trying to rely as much on that round one knockout lately. He wants to try to, go the full 15 minutes and show his well-rounded skill set over the full 15. So I think the goes the distance is not bad here if you're feeling a bit risky on that plus 180. But, I'd say just a small bet on Dolce and move on here. No need to think about this one too much. That takes us to the first fight on the main card. Women's fight's been rescheduled to this week. Lauren Murphy, Misha Tate. Misha Tate's the favorite, minus 192. Lauren Murphy plus 167. Kind of going back and forth this week with this one. Part of me thinks that obviously Tate probably the better career overall fighter. She throws a bit more strikes. She's looked all right, honestly. Maybe a little bit better than I've expected since coming off that long layoff. But it is women's MMA. We do have a minus 192 favorite, a 65% favorite, and Lauren Murphy, to me, can probably hang everywhere here. I mean, she's not going to be blown out of the water on the feet. It's going to be competitive striking exchanges, and either woman can take either one down and end up on top and win rounds that way. And Lauren Murphy, her nickname Lucky, she does get extremely lucky with these decisions. Two in recent memory, the Andrea Lee and the Jojo Calderwood fight, both on the luckier side there. And she's, historically just been a good, solid underdog. And So I guess all you can really do is dog or pass here. I mean, the betting Misha Tate is out of the freaking question. So it's the only question here is, are you taking the stab on Murphy or not? And at this price, it's probably worth it. So I don't knock a stab on it. I don't know if I'll have any action, but easy Murphy or pass, and I'll be cheering for her as well. You got any thoughts here, Ozzy?
Yeah, my bad. Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts here actually. This is a fight where I really don't understand why people are kind of like leaning so much towards um Misha Tate. Obviously, Lauren did not look good in, her last fight, but it was against Valentina Shevchenko. And Misha Tate, yeah, her wrestling technically is, I think, is solid, for the female women's divisions. It's probably very, very high level. It's all right. But there's some moments where you see where even though she has the right idea and they're like the technically proficient way to finish these takedowns and get to them, they don't end up working like it against Ketlin. I think she had a hard time. Obviously, Ketlin's pretty big, but the Marion Renault fight, Marion, she just never had good wrestling. She's never really been able to withstand the grind of a grappler. Like the girl was getting taken down easily by Macy Chiasson, for God's sake. So who is not a technical wrestler, right? It's just about putting that pace on and putting her through the grinder. Now Lauren Murphy, on the other hand, like these girls are kind of like, not, I'm not saying they're mirror images of each other, but they kind of fight a little similarly. But just, I don't like anything I see on the feet from Misha Tate. Like she has a bad tendency that I personally used to have as well when I was like, boxing and kickboxing and stuff, getting ready for MMA fights. She's always moving her head off to her right hand side all the time. Like she's either like pulling back, leaning to the right, shying away from punches to the right. It's just weird. You see her in the Catlin fight the whole time. And it's just a bad tendency, and she kind of comes in at weird angles, and she's not really direct, whereas Lauren Murphy, I think, has the much cleaner boxing, both offensively and defensively. I was listening to the portion of Club and Sub with Stargarian and all the other folks on there, and I think John was speaking about the like, hey, what is Lauren Murphy good at? And hey, Lauren Murphy gets outstruck all the time, and she gets out volume and this or that. I mean, but if you look at her fights and you actually look at the stats a little bit further, which I don't usually do, she actually outlands most of her opponents to the head. And the way that she is losing on volume is because of leg kicks and body strikes often, but mostly leg kicks. You can look at the Joanne Calderwood fight, the Andrea Lee fight, which are the ones that are the most skewed in terms of overall volume. But it's literally in all her fights because Lauren Murphy does not throw leg kicks at all. And guess who doesn't throw leg kicks either? Misha Tate. Guess what is easy, or a lot of times Misha Tate times her takedowns off of? Leg kicks very often, which is a solid tactic overall in MMA. But that's not really going to be here because Lauren Murphy is not really a leg kicker at all. And I also don't think she's going to get out-volumed at distance by Misha Tate because Misha Tate's not a leg kicker. So I see these girls being in the clinch a little bit. I see them being at range, quite often. And you throw in the fact that Misha Tate's going down in this 125 weight class, which historically has been bad for men and women. And the fact that she was not even considering dropping down to this weight class until Juliana Pena choked out Amanda Nunes about 7 months ago, then she started reconsidering it. But let's be honest, man, like Misha Tate is not that great overall for her to be at 210 chalk over Lauren Murphy, where, even if she is getting takedowns, like Lauren Murphy, she's shown get up ability, and Misha Tate, like her control is kind of loose, like on top, like she's not like the most dogged, like she kind of looks to take the back and things like that. So, I think Lauren Murphy's going to have ample opportunity to get up to her feet. I think she's probably going to look better than she did in that Shevchenko fight. She was saying some health stuff and yada yada. I don't know how true it is or not, but I do think that that was like an all-time worst performance. And I think it's easy to get motivated to fight a girl like Murphy-Tate coming down the division, thinking that she's going to be able to come in here, get a title shot off of one fight, just came off a main event. I think it's easy for Lauren Murphy to get up for that fight. She's probably wanted that fight her whole career. Like what 125 or 135 or wouldn't have wanted to fight Murphy-Tate? This is like, being in the 135 division on the male side and like not wanting the TJ Dillashaw fight. Like if you're, one of the contenders there, like Frankie Edgar, like, right? Don't you think Frankie Edgar would want to fight one of these guys, even if is not in title contention? Like, yeah, he'd want a big fight. He wants to fight Dominic Cruz. So just a little parallel, a little analogy there. It could be, you could throw it totally away. But the point being is I think Lauren Murphy's the better striker at range. I think she's a fine wrestler. And I think that I don't really see Murphy-Tate getting multiple takedowns easily, especially when you factor in this weight cut. That's, a big question mark. So give me Lauren Murphy. And I'm fairly confident that, she might not win, but I'm fairly confident that this will look like a fight that's closer than that 175, 180 number. And that's what I'm in this for. So I'll take Lauren Murphy. I'll take her by decision. And yeah, I'm pretty confident that it's a solid dog money women's MMA play.
Yeah, good point about dropping down the weight. I forgot to mention that Tate, cutting down to 125 here. First time in her career, right? That's got to be a big concern. Who the hell knows how she's going to look? And the only real bad sign for Murphy, though, is apparently she did have COVID. I think like 3 weeks ago when the fight was supposed to happen. Hopefully, no long-standing effects to that. But she's lucky. She's Lauren Lucky Murphy. She'll be fine. Next fight, one of the best on the card, Shane Burgos, the king of New York right now, taking on Charles Jourdain. Bet Online has this one. Burgos minus 175, Charles Jourdain plus 150. So I'll give a little introduction here before I pass it over to you, Ozzy. Shane Burgos is 6-0 in New York in the UFC. So you got to be thinking about that anytime you're betting on this fight. His only 3 losses took place outside of New York. So with that being said, you trust in Hurricane Shane here in this matchup?
Yeah, man. Obviously, I don't know anyone who doesn't look forward to a Shane Burgos fight. I was there when he TKO Makwan Americani, and obviously the crowd is buzzing for him. I was there when he fought Billy Q as well, and that was an insane fight. And I think this is a pretty interesting matchup here. Obviously Shane has a lot of great attributes that he brings to the cage. He also has a lot of great skills that he mixes in, and I think he's found. Or he applied a lot of his attributes, like I mentioned, to his skills, and he kind of matched them up really well. And but I could see the faults here in his game overall that could leave him susceptible for a guy like Jourdain, who is a high flyer, is a high risk maneuver guy, and he's been getting a little bit more consistent overall. Is still a young fighter coming into his own. But I mean, realistically, for me, when I'm looking at these guys, I see Shane as a better fighter in every aspect and every realm of the fight game. Overall, I think you can look at that Julian Erosa fight and draw a lot of parallels or a lot of confidence in a guy like Shane here. When you kind of looking at this fight, I think it's easy to see and say, okay, like if Shane loses, it's going to be because Jourdain, cracks the chin, hits some of the big bomb. But like, I just can't, factor that in all that much in terms of my pick for the fight, just because I think Shane has the ability to fight a little slower, has the ability to avoid some of these shots. He can he could cage push Jourdain like he was doing Billy Q at certain points, rip the body like Julian Erosa was doing, which I think hurt Jourdain at a few occasions. And I always say it, every Shane Burgos fight, the guy's got an underrated ground game. He started off as a grappler. I used to see him, at grappling tournaments all the time. Like this guy knows how to grapple. His brother, just made his MMA debut, and the first thing he did was, or not the first thing he did, but he ended up taking the guy down, rear naked choking him. Like, this is what you should do, right? He did this to Billy Algeo. Like, Bill Algeo threw like a spinning back kick. I forget what it was. And Shane body locked him from the back, picked him up, put him down, put his hooks in, and it's over. And I think if he's able to take the back on someone like Jourdain, I think he's able to finish him pretty quickly, and make it an easy night for himself. I hope he does. I hope he does do that. But even if he doesn't, man, I think that, a southpaw like Jourdain, I think that it could devolve into a fight where Shane's on the outside and Jourdain's just ripping the kicks, the left kick, inside leg kick, body kick. But Shane's pretty good at countering those. And I just think that if he minds his P's and Q's, looks for that left hand, rolls it, he's very good at rolling shots. And I think the angle that left hand is coming from Jourdain, I think it's actually going to play into the defense of Shane and allow him to counter it big. So I mean, at the minus 165 number, I like Shane. I'm not going to play him too big just because I've been disappointed by him at times before, and I could see a pitfall potentially here. But Jourdain usually starts off strong, so even if I play it a little smaller beforehand and look to invest in the live number, I think that I will get a good live bet there as well. But I'm also going to take a little pop on the Shane inside the distance here. I mean, it's gone down a little bit. I played it already for a little bit, but I think that he's going to be able to get Jourdain out of there at some point, maybe late. If you want a little bit better of a number, maybe Shane round 2, round 3. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this fight. But I think Shane's going to pick up another win and keep his New York record undefeated.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with pretty much everything there. I like Burgos here as well. Bet him already minus 165. Maybe a little bit better than the inside the distance would be his points handicap line. That looks like it's going to be minus 105 right now. That should cover, the 30-27 and the finish. But, little hesitancy there just because Burgos does kind of typically like maybe have one slow round. Sometimes round one, he can be a bit of a slow starter. Um, but I mean, I just see this matchup being very, advantageous for him. You mentioned the Erosa fight. I think that's the most relevant fight for Jourdain here. And in that fight, I think Orosa looked a little more like calm and collected than he typically did. He boxed out of the orthodox stance, was a lot more boxing heavy, and you saw him ripping nasty body shots and knees to the body. That's going to be a huge factor here. Shane loves ripping to the body. He actually has a really good front kick, teep kick as well that he throws at distance that should be landing to the body. And I just see Burgos is the better boxer. He's more durable. We've seen Jourdain get hurt several times in the UFC. I think Jourdain probably does have more one punch power than Burgos because we do see Jourdain dropping guys, but that's a combination of the speed and Jourdain's in and out type of style. And I think that we could have a moment like that here where Jourdain lands a hard left hand and maybe it gives Burgos a buckle of some sort. But this dude is so hard to consistently hurt and to get out of there. I really don't see Jourdain doing that. And I think it's just gonna be Burgos' fight, man. I really like that the body shots are gonna be big. Maybe rip that inside leg kick with that's orthodox versus southpaw matchup. And you just saw Burgos build so well into that Quarantillo fight. Billy Q gave him some issues early, but he just adapts really well. He has really good cardio for the full 15 minutes. And Burgos is just a guy, I'm comfortable laying juice on in this situation. I like the price tag. I like the matchup. And, that New York record speaks for itself. I don't see him losing at home here. And that's going to take us to the next fight, which is in the flyweight division. We have Sumidarji taking on Matt Schnell. Su minus 260, Schnell plus 220. Uh, Decent matchup here. Never can be too excited to see a Matt Schnell fight just because the guy has caused a lot of pain and suffering for us bettors out there in our lifetimes. I feel like every time I bet for this guy's fights to go the distance or end inside the distance, it ends up going the distance. And every time I bet on him, he ends up shitting the bed and doing something stupid. I mean, he's just a very frustrating fighter to watch. Sumidarji, very inactive in his time in the UFC thus far. Got dominated by Luis Smolka and then all of a sudden looked extremely better, leveled up versus Sukumtat, and then had those two performances knocking out Malcolm Gordon in 30 seconds, a decision over Adeshev. Just a lot of easy matchups and just low level fighters that he's been given. And, they haven't been feeding this guy tough matchups. They tried to book him versus Manal Cop. That fight got canceled, sadly. But I think that Schnell is honestly a bit of a tougher matchup than the odds are giving him credit for. I'm not endorsing this guy as a bet because he's a very challenging guy to fully lay that bet on. But Sue here at 70%, I do think is a bit wrong for Sue. I mean Sue doesn't really offensively grapple, and I see I see Schnell maybe giving us some problems on the feet here, man. It really depends on where the range takes place in this fight. Now, Schnell can do two things. He can get super aggressive in your face, try to close that distance, throw his own punches, and he might have success. That's what he did versus Royval. Royval was pumping out those southpaw long strikes, and Schnell was pressuring him. He was throwing hands, and he dropped him. But then, like a moron, he followed up on the ground, and he made several mistakes, mistake after mistake, and he ended up getting his neck caught. And that's just the type of fighter the guy is. He's just stupid, and he doesn't recognize how to make good decisions in the middle of the fight. So if this fight is a clean striking fight and they can keep it at kicking range and at distance, then Sue's going to outbox him for sure. He's going to use those kicks, that long straight punches of his, and he's going to outstrike Schnell. But if Schnell, grows a pair and decides to make the fight, gritty, and he decides to pressure and try to get the fighting close, he can really shock some people and hurt Sue with his strikes here. But this one should go under. It should not go the distance. But the only reason I'm not in love with the inside the distance is because it feels like it's either going to end in round one or they could coast to a decision. It really depends on Schnell's tempo, because if Schnell isn't aggressive, then Sue won't be aggressive either. So I feel like the fight ending in round one is not a bad small bet. So fight doesn't start round two at plus 215 for like a half unit, just in case they swing to the death in round one. So that's my analysis for the fight. What do you think in your Aussie?
I don't know what Matt Schnell's deal is. I mean, the guy was doing great against Brandon Royval and decided that he just wanted out of the fight. I don't know what's wrong with him. I don't know if it's maybe like the weight cut, like just doesn't like being in there at 125. I don't know, but the guy hasn't had a good 125 performance in a while. Sue, he's still developing, right? He tore his ACL, that's why he hasn't fought in a while. And I usually don't like backing or supporting or picking guys off ACL tears, but he's taken a little bit time off, enough, I guess. Um, but he's just way more fleet of foot than Matt Schnell. The southpaw side of things. I don't think Matt Schnell's gonna see that left hand coming, all that well. And I just think Matt Schnell is like a funny boxer. Like if you watch him against like Tyson Nam and Bontaran, like he thinks like as he's boxing, like he's taking like super clean angles and it's looking real clean and real good, but then he like gets popped or something like that, or he'll get hit clean. And I just think that the range here is going to be a little bit too much for him. So I would coach him to try to look to grapple. Obviously, you saw how much success Smoka had against Sumidarji, doing that. But I just think Sue's gonna be too elusive. He's gonna pop him, with straight shots as he comes in, maybe a head kick thrown in there, here and there. And I think he's gonna win kind of rather easily, unless Matt Schnell shows up with the career best performance. But I don't think that's happening, man. I think this guy, you have to be like extremely demoralized after that last fight, even though he is taking another fight here relatively quickly. It was just a ridiculous performance. I don't think that Susan be there to be hit, as much as Royval is and was. He's just a lot cleaner and a lot safer of a striker overall. And yeah, I think he's in the pick at Matt Schnell, win a easy fight. I could definitely see it going over or goes the distance, like you said. Just they're in the big cage, and like I said, Sumidarji loves circling away and circling out. And Matt Schnell doesn't press the fight all that much unless he wants to dive into a submission. And I don't think that he wants to do that in this fight as much. Like I don't think there's gonna be that much grappling. So yeah, I'll take Sumidarji, and I mean I think the odds are mostly correct, and I don't think Matt Schnell has that much of a easy path to a win. It would have to be a gritty fight, and Matt Schnell usually doesn't win gritty fights. So give me Sue.
Looking at some props for this fight, they have Schnell KO1 at plus 3,000. I mean, he does go for it early. He does, he just dropped Royval in round one. And then they have Sue sub one at plus 5,000. I feel like he could club and sub, Schnell possibly. So those are two interesting props there. Two long shots there. Keeping it up with China in the next fight, we have Li Jingliang taking on Muslim Salikhov, minus 160 for Salikhov. Jingliang at plus 140. Jing said this fight is big in China. Salikhov is a Sanda guy. He's beaten a lot of Chinese fighters, and the Chinese fans want Li to avenge those losses. So big fight here for Chinese MMA. What are your thoughts on this welterweight fight, Ozzy?
Yeah, you already know we're going China back to back here. I'm sure that was not a scheduling mistake by the UFC. They also made the poster in Chinese colors, probably also not a mistake. And on ABC, they're just pandering. You know that ABC, Disney, they're all just a ploy. They've been infiltrated by China. But let me not get into all those conspiracy theories. My Walt Disney stock is in the toilet right now, so I need some more China money to show up. But anyway. Yeah, I mean, I like Jing Liang here in this fight. He hasn't had too many substantial performances in the fact of like cage time, right? Because he knocked out um Santiago quickly. He got choked out by Chimaev, and then that Neil Magny fight was just funny. I don't like it's just a normal Neil Magny fight. That was a horror. I hate Neil Magny. I hope he gets cut. But Jing Liang, I mean, I think that he's just gonna approach this fight tactically overall. And I think that's good because Muslim Salikov, he is a talented guy. He's got a piston of a right hand. Like his right hand is super impressive to me because he could change the angles of it, right? He throws the overhand right like he knocked out Nordim with, but he also has a good straight right hand and he lands it from all different kinds of angles. But other than that, he's very low volume. His conditioning and his cardio, I would say, is not the best. He goes for takedowns, but never solidifies top position. And I just think that volume wise, I think Jing Liang can get ahead of him. Jing Liang has also never been knocked out. He'll do anything to win, including clawing eyes, kicking groins. I mean, the guy's a dirty fighter, but whatever. And yeah, I just think he's gonna be able to volume Muslim. I think Salikov, if he doesn't land that big right hand, it's tough for him to win minutes and win rounds decisively. And I think that Jing Liang, from these fights that he's had, like with Neil Magny and Santiago and Chimaev, I think like he's seen the level that he needs to be at. He's can't come over stateside a few weeks in advance, and I think is developing his game still more, even though he is a little older. He's 34, I believe. I think he's still developing a bit. He's a young 34, I would say. Whereas Salikov is like almost 40, coming up on. And yeah, just think it's gonna be a pretty competitive fight. I got some plus 145 for Jing Liang. I think that's a solid number, solid price. I think he'll use the kicks, use the leg kicks, use his jab, and he's got a pretty good left hook. And it's gonna be a matter of who lands that the bigger shot first. I think we'll set the tempo of the fight. And I think it will be Jing Liang. But I think it'll be competitive overall. But give me the plus money here. I wouldn't play it anything under plus 140 or like maybe like 135 is like the borderline. And I do favor this fight. I could see the fight ending early, right? Like a big shot coming from either one of them. But I do like the Jing Liang by decision as well at a plus 450. I think that's a super wide number, in comparison to what the Salikov number is. Because, like I said, Salikov is not that great of a round winner. So, I don't really see the discrepancy and why they think that Lee is so much more likely to win by inside the distance than decision.
Yeah, slight disagreement with this assessment. I mean, I do see, Salikov is just a cleaner striker. I think he's fine as, a win at minor, or did I say that right? A minute winner. And the Trinaldo fight, just his most recent fight, really impressed me. That was a while ago though. Man, he's pretty inactive, right? He's had like one fight a year for the past 3 years, right? I think yeah, I mean, even worse than that. I mean, one fight in 2020, one fight in 2021, two in 2019. But he's just been very, fairly inactive. Is on a five-fight win streak though. But just over pretty mediocre competition. I mean, Trinaldo far and away the best win. The Zaleski fight, a pretty controversial decision. A lot of people don't think he won that one. And Jing Liang in his most recent relevant fight, that's the Santiago Ponzinibbio fight, I thought he looked good there. He looked a lot better than usual. He was pumping out a lot more volume. He was throwing leg kicks to the inside and the outside. He obviously caught Pons with that nasty counter, and we've seen Pons in wars since then. I mean, he's gotten hit a lot by several different fighters, and Jing Liang was the only guy who actually was able to fully put him out. So Jing Liang's power is different. And these guys are probably going to trade on the feet. I see it being a competitive striking fight. And I think the line is about right. But I'm not discrediting the chances of Jing. I think I would definitely rather be on the dog in this type of fight, just because I think the speed and the athletic advantages for Jing Liang here might be more significant than we're expecting. Salikov is 39 years old. Uh, or 38 years old, and with that, only fighting once a year for the past several years, I feel like we could be, underestimating the athletic difference between these guys. And I just see the fight being, a hectic striking fight, and that means I'm betting the inside the distance here. I bet it at minus 105 on Bet Online. I think either guy could finish one another. Honestly, I think it tends to favor Salikhov early versus Jing Liang late. We have some buddies who are betting Jing Liang late KO. He has had several round three KOs in his UFC career. So, I agree. Those round two and three props for Lee at plus 1,000 and plus 1,400 probably worth a stab there. And that'll be my way to play the fight. Next fight, women's strawweight. No, no, no. Is this flyweight? I don't even know what it is. I think it's strawweight. Amanda Lemos taking on Michelle Waterson. Lemos minus 305, Waterson plus 255. I mean, this fight is dog shit. I mean, it's going to be excruciating to watch this fight, honestly, in person, because both these women, stink. To be honest, I mean, Waterson has no idea how to fight. I'm dead serious with you guys. She has no idea what she's doing in the cage. She doesn't understand the meta. She doesn't understand damage. She doesn't understand how to throw punches. It's just an excruciating affair watching her fight. And the only way she really typically wins fights is by getting those clinch takedowns or those body lock trips or something. And I don't think she's doing that to Lemos here. Lemos is going to have a big difference in strength, physicality. Obviously, she's the much harder hitter of the two. But Lemos, as a round winner, is pretty shit. Her cardio is not good. She doesn't typically initiate the offensive grappling, despite her having a few subs. This fight just stinks. I have no thoughts on it, except Lemos by sub at plus 1,600. Like, the woman has, doesn't she have multiple subs in the UFC? No, no, she only had one against Granger. But I mean, with Waterson loving to shoot those weak takedowns, and Lemos having the punching power advantage, I could see Lemos hurting her with a punch, following up with a sub, or Waterson diving into a terrible takedown and getting her neck caught. I mean, they have Lemos sub and Waterson sub as the same price, and at those prices, I think Lemos sub is worth a stab at that big plus 1,600 number. That's really my only thoughts on the fight. Ozzy, you care about this one at all?
Not that much. I mean, I don't like either girl. I don't think Lemos is a good fighter at all, but she does throw and use techniques that I think are more viable overall. As in, like, she'll throw calf kicks, she looks to land her right hand. Whereas, Waterson, she throws side kicks, like, her punches are like little blitzing attacks that people think that are effective. I remember when people thought that she like convincingly beat Carla Esparza, and like I'm like, guys, how are you even like yelling about this decision? Like nothing happened. Like there's no way you think this is a robbery. But regardless, I think Lemos probably will win. Like I said, she does land the more eye-catching shots and the better strikes overall. But I mean, the girl's not good. She's not technical. Like her technical acumen is not high. So if Michelle is able to get to the clinch and get her in like extended grappling positions, I mean, you saw the girl got arm triangled on her feet. So I would say that transition wise, and if Waterson gets on top, I do think that she can hold Lemos down, take her back, potentially maybe get a submission here. What's Michelle by submission? It is 12-1, 16-1 on FanDuel. So I'd rather play Waterson by submission than Lemos by the submission. But I do think that on the feet, Lemos being at 125, not having to suck herself down on 115, I think actually is going to work out okay for her as well. I don't think she minds it, the weight class difference. So I think Lemos will end up winning. But I think Waterson by submission is an okay play because I do think she will look to grapple here at some point and, in every round as well. But I probably won't bet on the fight. But if I did, or if I do, it'll probably be a little stab on Michelle by submission.
This is actually 115, not 125. You know that?
Don't care, bro. We can move on.
But yeah, I guess Michelle does have several subs. She won 4 fights in a row by sub back in the day, but none since. So our butting head to heads on plus 1,600 there. That'll be fun to see. Main event time. Brian Ortega, Yair Rodriguez. Great matchup here. Brian Ortega minus 180. Bet online. Yair Rodriguez plus 155. Ozzy, what are you thinking about this? Both top 5 ranked guys. Solid main event. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah, great fight. I mean, I'm a big Brian Ortega fan. I had him by submission like 7-1 against Volkanovski. Obviously, that probably should have cashed there. And it was there were 2 or 3 good submission attempts there. Personally, I'm not taking the Ortega money line, side going into this matchup. I think that people are getting a little bit over their skis. They're looking for a win. I think there's a lot of people that have been cold as of late just because of the variance that has hit, MMA, and they're kind of looking for a winner and obviously a main event winner. I'm gonna avoid this fight. The only bet that I'm gonna make, and I always make, honestly, is I take Ortega round 3. Obviously, it's not that great of a line here, but just getting into the matchup aspect of it, my main hesitancy is, Ortega's been using the southpaw stance, a lot, as of late. And while the guy is durable, obviously with head strikes, we've seen the body kicks of Yair Rodriguez put down like a guy like Jeremy Stevens, right? Who, you would think has great durability, right? But he got hit to the body and he went down. And, anyone could go down from those kicks to the body. And also, Brian's just not that much of a proactive grappler. I do think he will more so here. But I don't think it will necessarily be effective. You know what I mean? Like, the kind of takedowns that he goes for kind of like trips, and he'll do weird stuff. He'll like try to grab a clinch on you and then just jump, try to do a snap down to the guillotine. Not saying that that's weird, but just a lot of people don't do it. Snap down to a guillotine, or he'll like go for a flying triangle. I wouldn't be surprised at him doing any of that stuff, flying at Yair, trying to get a submission here. But hands wise, I just don't really like his striking and his timing. And I just think that Yair, he's faster on the outside. He enters in with more deliberate and more direct, and he kind of knows the combination he wants to throw out. Whereas Brian, I think he's a little bit more he lets the fight come to him a little bit more, and that, I think that coincides with why he's gotten many round 3 finishes, right? A lot of times he, like the first round, he doesn't start off very quickly. He doesn't start off well. I think only the Chan Sung Jung fight, I don't remember if it was the first, which round was it where he hit him with the spinning elbow, but he looked a lot better in that first round. But traditionally he doesn't do that. His shot selection, I don't think, is the best. He doesn't really throw that many kicks. I mean, the leg kick, he's been throwing more kicks, but obviously Yair is the better kicker. So yeah, I mean, I'm not as inclined like other people to lay the chalk here. I think that it's very live for Yair to come out strong, himself, and you get a good live money line price on Brian after losing a round. Obviously the books are hip to it. They know that the guy still has a lot of finishing equity in the later rounds. So I'm taking that round 3 stab, just because he always picks it up there. Maybe some later props as well, just because Yair, once he does tire out, I think the grappling, the disparity in grappling only gets larger, and the way that Brian is able to cut through guys on the ground is just gets substantiated more and kind of just builds as guys get more tired. So like if he got a guy like Ortega or Rodriguez, like he had Volk, he would just be able to go through a bit more of the positions, just because the reaction times for guys that aren't Volkanovski slow down a lot in the later rounds in the grappling. So I'll still pick Ortega to win, but I will not be laying this money line price. I'll look for a live entry, and I got that round 3 prop.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you said there. I mean, the 3-4-5, Ortega 3, 1300, 4, 1800, 5, 2200. I mean, the later the fight goes, I think it should favor him. I think he does have the more, finishing upside too with the sub. And considering, Brian can just take a beating, he's a hard guy to finish. So I could see it being hard for Yair, especially because even if Yair, hurts him, we could see, Ortega, lay on his back, pull guard a little bit, look to collect himself. And Yair is probably not going to want to follow him down to the ground. We're gonna do that thing where what was happening a lot last week, where these guys just lay on their backs, the other guy stands there and kicks them. These refs need to do something about that. That should not even be allowed. I mean, we watched like 3 minutes of that last week happen, where guys are just standing there kicking the guy's legs. But anyway, I took some of that Ortega sub that was available early on FanDuel, 470. Obviously, that dropped a lot. Good price there. But I mean, from a money line side, I mean, I think this is easy Yair or pass here at this, the price where it's at now. I mean, I think the general consensus on this fight is Ortega is going to get his ass kicked until he finds a way to win, right? He always does that. I mean, this guy, even when he was coming on his run, when he was first getting traction in the UFC, the Moicano fight, the Guida fight, there was another one in there too as well, where he was losing those fights, and then he comes back in round 3 and finishes guys. He has, tremendous will and uh, or I don't know what the word I was looking for is. He has a great ability to withstand adversity and to just keep.
Fighting spirit.
Yeah,
Fighting
there you go.
spirit.
Modelo, fighting spirit, exactly. Man, that's a huge narrative going into this one. Hadn't even thought about that one, but um, yeah, I mean, he's not he can get his ass kicked for a few rounds, and he's not going to lose, faith of winning. While on the other hand, Yair, it doesn't seem to have as much, fight in him as Ortega does. Especially when you look at that Yair fight in round 3 versus Stevens. I mean, that fight was originally supposed to be 5 rounds. It got canceled because of that eye poke. And if that fight goes 5 rounds, I mean, Jeremy Stevens whoops that ass in those later rounds. And Yair, I think he'll always be that type of fighter. He has that dynamic striking style, and I just don't think his cardio can ever really get to the point where he can sustain that into the later rounds. He's just not going to be a 5 round fighter, kind of similar to Zabit. I just don't think that style it would have been suited for those extra 2 rounds. So early on, I think Yair, you can bet him and then look to trade out live. I do expect Yair to be a favorite after the first round or two, and then the later fight, the 3-4-5 is definitely got to favor Ortega. But man, Ortega at -180, they're pricing him as if he's going to come out and shoot takedowns in round 1 and to out grapple Yair from the start. This guy Ortega never wrestles from the beginning. He always strikes, feels the fight out a bit, and even the fights he wins by sub, he typically snatches these subs from really opportunistic positions on the feet in the clinch. The Volkanovski fight was just a caught kick that he immediately jumped onto the neck there. He is not a good wrestler by any means, and I feel like the market is just pricing Ortega like he's gonna get takedowns, control him and sub him and win, without much resistance. But that's not Ortega style. He loves to make the fight a little difficult, and then he loves to, come back and eventually get that sub. And I think Yair is getting a bit underrated here, man. I think I'll be cheering for Yair here, although I do got that bet on Ortega sub. I will end up on Ortega 3-4-5 as well. But money line, easy dog or pass situation. Very fun fight. Looking forward to watching this one play out. And that'll do it for this week's podcast. That's going to bring us to our best bet parlay of the week. Is it really the best bet parlay of the week if it's lost, 5 weeks in a row? Well, we'll see. We have another one coming up this week. Who's going first here, Ozzy? I feel like we're going to fight for the same bet.
I got Ricky Simone.
Oh, okay. Bet. You're going to make it easy. I'll take Hurricane Shane then.
Okay.
That's a good one.
That
So
works for me. I
minus
always go for I try to avoid I try to put the one that I think's got the most value overall with the price, and I think for me that's Ricky Simone this week. That's the fight that I'm gonna have the most on in terms of the return coming back. So I mean I like Simone, Murphy, Shane, and who else? I think I got one.
Lee.
Lee, yeah, like Lee, Lee's a good bet, I think, overall. So yeah, those are the plays that I have this week that I like. So hopefully, looking to go, looking to go 3-1 on those. Hopefully, that'd be a great week. And try to reverse the reverse from last week.
Yeah, so you combine Burgos -165, Simone +145 on DraftKings. That comes out to +293. And I'm feeling good about those two as well. So hopefully we can get back on the board this week. Been going through some cold streaks on track bets lately,
A lot
but
of people, a
that's
lot of people have been going through cold streaks. You hear it's a consistent theme right now. I think it's the overall variance. I don't think it's limited to anyone, on any side of things. I know my boy Pepe, one of my New York boys, he's been doing well. Liam, a few people, but I think overall, like people could be even doing better with some of his variances been hitting, but you just got to stay the course. We started this podcast, I think last year was like the last week of July. It was like July 24th, 23rd. And from then to like the end of the year, I think I ripped off like 55 units or something like that. So I'm not concerned. I keep doing this every week. It is what it is. I've been watching MMA for fucking, 16 years now. So ain't nothing going to change.
a good point. Yeah, second half of last year we were killing it. Even I feel like the first few months of this year we were doing well, but then I feel like March, April came around, started doing bad, and then the past few months have been rough. Um, But yeah, thanks to everyone sticking in there, continuing to listen. We're even if we're getting unlucky on some of these bets, we're still producing good podcasts, a lot of good information, and talking about props and ways to play the fight. So glad you guys are still listening and enjoying the podcast. And we'll see you all before next week's UFC card, UFC London, another banger of a card. And again, if anybody's in Long Island this weekend, hit me up and maybe we can meet up at the fights at some point. And hope you all enjoy the fights, win some bets, and we'll see you all next week. Peace out, everyone.